Greetings and salutations. Welcome to this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Before we begin, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share the show with a friend. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave us a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. My guest today is a playwright, screenwriter, and comic book writer. Her plays include Year of the Rooster, The Tomb of King Tut, both named critics picked by the New York Times and The Messenger. Her plays have been performed at the Ensemble Studio Theater, Youngblood, the Flea Theater, the Morin Theater, the 52nd Street Project, the Theater for the New City, Upstart Theater, and the Stray Dog Theater, among others. In addition to the Venturous Playwrights Fellowship, she is the recipient of a Playwrights of New York Fellowship, a Sloan Commission, the David Colloquio Emerging Playwright Award, the Lipkin Playwriting Award, and three Harl Adair Damon Playwriting Awards. Her play For Want of a Horse opens at the Echo Theater Company in Atwater Village in Los Angeles on April 18th and runs through May 24th. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Olivia Dufault.
Hello,
we
James.
Just did this. William Dafoe, Olivia Dufault. Gosh, darn it!
You almost had it.
It's the story of my life.
I believed in you,
William
too.
Dafoe, Olivia Dufault. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay.
That's why I ask, because I never remember to ask. My audience is they're used to this. And
It's the perfect introduction. It's why I would prefer. Thank you so much for having me.
No,
it's a pleasure.
No, more importantly, thanks for coming back. So for those of you that may not know, Olivia showed up 2 minutes after the lens broke last week, and we were supposed to record this a week
They didn't
ago.
have to know that. We could have played it off.
I'm
What
all
a
about
beautiful
honesty.
office I've never seen for the first time.
So, so a lot of accomplishments, and let's start at the very beginning.
Yes.
Which, as Julie Hendricks would say, is a very good place to start. How'd you get into playwriting?
Well, high school, honestly. I went
Where
to...
was high school? Just
well,
and there we're off to a great start.
So I grew up in rural Massachusetts, a tiny little town called Pepperell on the border of New Hampshire. Okay. And I went to school at this kind of eccentric charter school, wherein my senior year of high school, I was given tremendous kind of leeway to do as I wished. And I wished to write and produce a play. And I did so with just a ragtag bunch of misfits, and it was a very formative experience. It very much felt like, in classic kind of Muppet Show fashion, just gathering a bunch of weirdos and making something up. And I just fell in love with the experience and have been chasing it ever since.
Can I ask what year that was?
Gosh, let's see. I graduated 2010.
Okay. So
No, I lied. That was when I graduated college. I'm not that young. That was 2006. I don't want to lie.
God bless you. Okay, so on that note, you just pulled the trigger.
Yeah, I mean, I remember actually the play that made me, that influenced me to begin writing was honestly Kurt Vonnegut's Happy Birthday, Wanda June, which is like a very obscure play that he wrote.
And I'm going to embarrass myself because I have a copy of Welcome to the Monkey House somewhere behind me. And I can't remember knowing Vonnegut wrote a play.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to have to visit that.
It was, I went through a deep Vonnegut phase, especially in high school, where I just like devoured everything he'd ever done and discovered this play and was like, whoa, plays can be a lot different than I expected. And through that, I think I got into like Ionesco and Rhinoceros.
Okay, yeah.
Which fits the animal bullshit that I do. And Sarah Ruhl and just, fell in love with theater and what theater could be.
And this goes in the Vonnegut thing, I think that Bradbury wrote some plays as well, which I was not aware of. So it's fascinating to hear that, discover authors.
Yes, I have not read Bradbury's plays, but I heard he also has done some.
Yeah. So you were inspired by Vonnegut. You wrote your play. What did you learn? What was it? I don't want to say successful. You know what I mean?
I'm going to say it was successful because
Okay.
I felt it was my first experience really collaborating. Before that, I like dabbled in prose, but it was really my first time making something with a group of people and just seeing how much stronger things can come together through the collaborative process. And so just the fact that I had fun and it felt like it brought people together. The theater didn't have much of a, the school didn't have much of a theater program.
Sure.
And so it was really nice to be able to bring some of that into the world.
Well, sometimes that's the best as well. When when you're limited, it teaches you to be creative and think outside the box. So on that note, then, and that's why I said I don't want to say it's success is that you completed a project. That's number one. What did you learn from that experience as far as like, okay, I need to work on this element of playwriting,
I think something that I think honestly it really a lot of my early plays were just so wild and so off the wall, and I think it was really nice to go to college and then have a more formal educational experience surrounding playwriting.
Okay, yeah.
and really begin to like delve into structure more.
Okay.
And I feel like that really helped in terms of just giving me skeletons to hang all of my nonsense clothing onto. So I'd say that like those early plays had so much enthusiasm and were just bursting with ideas. But I think that in general, the more that I've learned to create a coherent story arc,
Sure.
my work has only improved.
So does that mean that does that mean you gained focus, like, because you were, enthusiastic, but you need to reel yourself in to is that what that?
I guess so. I mean, honestly, I was so young when I was writing those plays. And then like in college, I'd say my experience was that I returned to prose writing thinking like, this is my calling. And then it was just profoundly, profoundly lonely. It was just such an isolating experience. And
How so?
oh, because I wrote a novella and I felt really proud of it, but just with no one to collaborate with, it felt so unfulfilling ultimately, even after I completed it.
So let's unpack that, because I'm really intrigued by that. So if you're writing prose and it's in a lonely place, not to go to a 1940s movie, right. But so where does if you're writing a play, where does at what point does the collaboration for you take effect, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it varies a lot with all sorts of different projects. For Want of a Horse, which is the show that's going up the Echo, was one of the more collaborative experiences I've had in terms of developing a play, in that it was workshopped through the Lark Play Development Center,
Okay.
which they also were the ones who gave me the Pony Fellowship, the Playwrights of New York Fellowship. I should, I know.
For Want of a Horse.
I know.
Get the pony.
It's really funny, actually, and amusing and appropriate that I actually began writing for Want of a Horse when I had this Pony Fellowship.
Okay.
I'd like to say that was a singular inspiration, but it wasn't.
So, all right. So my guess is you're not collaborating at the start.
No.
At what point, at what timestamp, I don't know if that's right for it. At what point do you start the collaboration process with your playwriting, where you start feeling comfortable, where like, now it's not lonely?
For One of a Horse, I think I brought in the first maybe 3 scenes initially into a writing group, and then it developed from there, and went through a variety. There was a variety of changes. There was one weird like month or so where I was like, this play could be a musical, and it was a terrible idea, which is just to say that I went through a lot of alterations and reconceptualizations before landing upon its current iteration.
What was the trigger? Here we are with horses again. What was the trigger to say, oh, this could be a musical? And then what was the catalyst to make it not?
Okay, so the musical catalyst came from being like, man, what does I've long tinkered with talking inanimate objects and animals,
okay.
and
we're gonna unpack this one.
I know, but that's been a recurring motif in a lot of my writing, but particularly my playwriting. And I was thinking about what horses sound like, and I was like, man, their brains probably sound more like music than anything else. And just like thinking about how horses run and like syncopation and things like that, I was like, oh, there was a world where if I was a great musician, I could make a great musical out of this. And then I realized quickly that I was not a great musician, and that honestly, it felt like the more, and I can get into this, but like the play is structured in a lot of ways like a classic romantic comedy. Like it's a love triangle, and adding in the musical element just like felt like one additional beat, I guess, too many. And the more I leaned into like, okay, this is think of this as the structure of a romantic comedy of sorts, a really tragic, really perverse romantic comedy. The more it made sense.
Not to go into a therapy session.
Oh, I mean, what else is this?
It's not. I'm curious because you said I'm not a very good musician. So I'm like,
yes.
What is that? What? Why is that? So is that the reason that you swayed away from the musical aspect?
Yes, and also, as I said, just the fact that it felt like too much, like adding that element in addition to the other portions of it felt unnecessary. I was also working on another musical, honestly, at the time, and I was like, this other musical feels like it's meant to be.
Okay, so it was the project and the subject matter, not the disbelief in your own talent, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I am daunted by musicals, and it remains something that I would like to explore more at some point in my life. But yeah, that's yet to be.
Okay, all right, fair enough. So you said you started with 3 scenes.
Yes.
And so did you go back and revisit those 3 scenes, or just like, okay, I'm going to take note of that, but I'm going to push forward with what I'm working on right now? And I only ask because I've trapped myself in my own writing where it's like I'll stay in that cycle.
Yeah.
Where I'm still working on the same 3 scenes where I'm like, I should be progressing.
No,
and
I push forward.
Okay.
That's how you do it. Or how I do it.
And that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about how it's like you push it aside and like, let me figure out where we're going first. Is that how it goes?
Yeah. And also just when I'm working, I really like to, when I get into a flow, that's when I produce my most work, my best work. And so a lot of the process is trying to get into that flow state. And when I'm able to do so, I am fortunate enough that I, 1, really enjoy the process, and 2, it happens quite quickly. So I'm able to complete drafts relatively speedily, which is something I feel very fortunate about.
Is there a step or moment or there's another word that I want to use for it, but when do you, is there anything that helps you to get into that flow state? Is there anything that, like, I know what I need to do, and once this happens, I'm in it?
On a very basic level, this is silly, but music. I need to be listening to music.
Okay.
I typically have either the same song or same album playing on repeat, and it puts me in this like hypnotic state. And then, I mean, like, it's interesting. I think that with playwriting more than any other medium, it's easiest to enter into a flow state because I can just like immerse myself in the character's dialogue and interior worlds. And also, as I said before, a simple structure, like this, again, like going back to what I felt like I learned in college was just like how, and this is such simple, stupid advice, but like the element of like, gosh, just give someone something they really want, and then give them something that's preventing them from achieving that. And then it's like, when I have that, it's like, okay, I can then go crazy and let my imagination run wild.
So, what was from high school to college? What was the impetus to what changed? How did you learn that structure?
I had a great teacher.
I'm sorry. Sorry not to interrupt.
No.
How did your structure change? What's changed in your structure?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying you didn't have structure.
Yeah.
But obviously something evolved.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think with playwriting, I mean, I learned from this professor, Stuart Spencer, at Sarah Lawrence College, and he was really instrumental in terms of just not being very like allowing me to go to my crazy spaces, which I can't help but do, but giving me just like the tools of like, hey, this is how things tend to be structured. And since then, I think I've and delving more as I've worked more in TV and film and comic books, I've sort of begun to unpack different structures for each different medium that I'm working in and see different ways that plays can be structured in all sorts of fashions. But just like having that super basic initial kind of silly formula to work off of really helped me.
If again, I always do this in episodes, so I'll always put playwrights on the spot because you're not in the moment. So, what was your structure like before, and what did it become?
Sure. I think when I was younger, I was just like, give them cake, let them eat as much as possible. Like, as many ideas condensed into scenes in the story. And I think that I've learned, I learned restraint as I've gotten older.
So does that equal overwriting?
Yes, definitely. And I think that's something that, like, my plays used to be a lot longer than they are now. And in general, I think my work has gotten more succinct as I've gotten older.
Okay. You said you had an instructor that allowed you to go to your crazy spaces. What does that mean?
I mean, it's not hard for me to go to crazy spaces, I guess. But as I said before, I always try to write. I didn't say this before. I always try to write in ways that are only possible in that medium. Like, I try to write plays that can only exist as plays, and TV shows that can only be TV shows, and comics can only be comic books, etc. And some of the things that excite me most about what you can do in theater is expressing abstract ideas and in things that shouldn't talking, and just a sense of this strange liminal world that you get to inhabit in theater, and like just the way in which the suspension of disbelief, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Sure, okay.
Yeah, that audience members in theater are vastly just superior and at being able to suspend their disbelief. And that allows me and has allowed me to do things in theater and explore spaces that I couldn't do in other areas.
How do you achieve that?
I guess bravado. Oh no. Bravado and foolishness.
Okay. All right. So, I mean, All right, let's unpack personification. We're already on there.
Mhm.
We're in that space, which, as listeners will know, I'm not the biggest fan. Which is
Wow,
fine.
an arrow in my heart. Brought here.
It probably went through the back and came out the front. So I apologize. Now here's the thing that I will say is doing this podcast for 5 seasons. I will say that I've been humbled to where I've seen success in that realm. I've seen it fail immensely. That being said, so I'm curious because this is an aspect I haven't really explored. Is that well? Let me ask you this: what are the objects or animals that you personify in your work?
Well, I'll go with my main plays that have had the most renown, which is my play Year of the Rooster, centers on a gamecock, a rooster bred for cockfighting, and the story is told partially through his warped perspective on this world this terrifying world that he's subjected to, and it's told partially from his owner/trainer's perspective. So that's Year the Rooster. That was my first my first like long form foray into talking animals. Then Tomb of King Tut, centered around a woman who is a newspaper cartoonist, and her newspaper strip, King Tut, is sort of a Richie Rich meets Hagar the Horrible type of yeah.
Wow, you took me back.
I know. But anyway, you see this character, King Tut, and you see these comic strips depicted on stage, and scenes wherein these characters become increasingly more dimensional over the course of the play. And then I've had all sorts of other short plays, like, a talking Virgin Mary statuette and a talking hula girl statuette, and I had a play about talking rabbits. So it's.
I'm a huge fan of Watership Down. Don't get me wrong. I guess I'm coming from a approach of playwriting. So, but still,
it's funny though. In a lot of ways, For Want of a Horse is for me the ultimate culmination and interrogation of that kind of personification, because I think there is a lot of trickery involved in it. Like, ideally, when you are personifying these sort of abstract either concepts or inanimate objects or animals or such, you're trying to like give truth to something, whether it be about that object or animal or about the human experience. But there's also something where, like, I'm very aware that you are not capturing the actual experience in doing so.
And I guess now that we're talking about it now, as much as this has come up in I guess it's never been done successfully in my experience, and that's why I say I've been humbled by it. Like, I'm certainly not against the allegory, is that right? Like animal farm, absolutely 100%. But I guess then my experience that I've had is like I've just watched failure after failure when it comes to stage plays and personification. So.
I think I'm also a sucker because, I think, as I mentioned, Sarah Ruhl was a big influence on me. And so I come from the school of, talking cell phones and talking rocks and talking almonds and things like that.
Complimentary nuts. So how do you, for anybody that might be, let's talk about the success of personification, okay? How do you approach the mindset of those characters?
I try to tap into certain primal or elemental impulses that feels like those animals or objects represent. Like with cockfighting, it was anger. It was just rage. And so the character was really emblematic of that, and also was just like a doomed Greek protagonist was sort of the idea behind that. And with For Want of a Horse, the idea was, I would say, more so just like this sounds strange, but the idea of domestication and what a domesticated animal's brain would be like, and where the wild impulses would come in, and where the domesticated impulses would come in. And so that idea of dominion and domestication, I think, became a touchstone for examining a horse's brain.
Okay. And you said you talked about touched on like tapping into the Greek aspect. How does that culmination come about?
I love Greek myths. I love Greek tragedy. Like Year of the Rooster is essentially a Greek tragedy. I'm writing a comic book right now that's very much set in the Greek world. But there's even some, I can't help but like, I think there's a Minotaur reference in For Want of a Horse. I'm pretty sure. If not, there's maybe a satyr. There's something in there. So yeah, I can't help but escape Greek myths. I've always had an interesting relationship with religion. And part of that, it was just reading that big yellow, like Frommer, what I forget the name of it, but everyone knows it. The classic Greek mythology book that we all had as children.
It might be sitting behind me. Who knows? Mm-hmm. So the Greek approach that you take, is that structure, or is that more like format? I don't know if that's right. Or is it like, do you implement the chorus and the meter and the...
Not the meter, but okay. I've definitely had choruses in plays. Okay. And, I do think that a lot of times my characters tend to be these doomed heroes with way too much hubris. I think that's a recurring theme, which feels quite Greek.
What do you think for like playwrights that are just starting off or anything to that extent that may not find themselves familiar with, the Greek classics? What can be drawn from those?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, one of my
Lysistrata, and any of them, that we start learning today. But mm-hmm. I'm just curious.
One of the first, I've done very, very little acting in my life, but I did act in a play in high school. I acted in Antigone as the messenger, which was the influence, actually, for the inspiration for my play, The Messenger. But yeah, I mean, it's hard because to me, I'm just like, well, the Greek mythology is so fascinating. Who wouldn't want to be? Who wouldn't be compelled by this world? Blind prophets and this complicated relationship with gods, and just, I don't know, such strong, incredible emotions. So yeah, I'd say, I mean, I love big mythic feelings, and it feels like implementing those into more modern worlds feels really fun.
Excellent. I'm going to rewind a little bit. You said something about a professor, and it was like he said something about tends to be structures. So, I mean, was that particular professor staunch about like this is how structure works, opposed to like playing around with it and like let's take a Pinter approach to it, or towards like we're going to mess with timeline? And do you take that approach and when you're writing, if you do mix it up a bit, how do you achieve it, I guess?
I tend to write plays that are pretty again, because the subject matter can be so out there, I tend to write plays that are pretty straightforward in terms of in terms of chronology,
Right.
in terms of some of my plays. I mean, I'm not going to say that some of my plays are may take more unconventional approaches, but I do think I tend to be drawn to just to just the simplicity of just the course.
The
Yeah,
linear approach.
yeah.
So, what's the unconventional approach you may take sometimes, and just to have some fun or like
Yeah.
explore?
I mean, I really like. I mean, part of this is I really like having multiple worlds that exist simultaneously. Like
We're not going into a Marvel a multiverse.
multiverse. No,
Okay.
I'm thinking more along the lines of like, for example, I wrote this play about doing speech therapy, which also was interspersed with scenes of rabbits living in a burrow, and it made sense. I promise. So there are ways that I really like to juxtapose the kind of different stories on top of each other. Yeah.
Please tell me you've read Watership Down.
Of course I have.
Okay, just want to make sure. Rabbits have come up twice already.
Rabbits,
so.
yeah. I had rabbits growing up. We had lots of animals growing up, but that includes rabbits.
Your use of motivation of music. Are you listening to the same album when you get to that flow state, or are you creating a soundtrack for what you're writing?
I wish I could say I was making a soundtrack for what I'm writing, because I feel like the cool playwrights and writers do that. But no, I find an album that I'm really into, or even just one song that I'm really into,
Sure.
And just listen to it on repeat. And sometimes through that, certain songs or playlists become associated with the play, but also like they're they would never be appropriate to like include in the play, for example.
Sure. Yeah. I just there's when I first started writing, it's like if a song came on, I'm like, oh, okay, I gotta go write because I know exactly what's happening during this moment. That's why I was curious if it was. Let me go put on some. I don't even want to give an example because that probably will age or date me. But how has your comic book writing affected your playwriting?
I adore comic books. I shouldn't be saying this on a playwriting podcast, but it's probably my favorite medium.
Okay.
And it's something that I've loved since I was a child, but only recently began working in over the past 3 years or so. And it's interesting because it's more like playwriting to a certain degree. Like when I'm coming up with ideas, I tend to be like, well, this could either be a comic book or a play, much more so than this could be a comic book or a movie, for example. And I think that's because in film and TV, there's so many restrictions that exist in terms of what can be done. And I think those limitations are a lot less restrictive in both comic books and play in theater. And so I think that comic books really allow me to expand my mind in terms of this story could be anything. It can be set in I've written science fiction stuff, which I haven't really dabbled in before. I'm writing, as I said, Greek mythology, sword and sorcery kind of stuff, which is really fun. There's just a sense of the possibilities feeling a lot more limitless. And in the same way with theater, it feels like you can, as I mentioned before, represent things and go places and have certain things occur and, have people experience magnificent, impossible events without having to actually, spend the money that is necessary to achieve that in film and television.
What came first, playwriting or comic book writing?
Oh, playwriting by far. I've always loved comic books, but it's funny, I always figured that I was like, one day I'll retire and I'll begin writing comic books. And then it was honestly like a little right before the TV writer's strike, I was a little disenchanted with TV and film and was like, what am I waiting for? I love this medium so much and I want to explore it. And it's been so rewarding. It's been I've had nothing but wonderful things to say about my experience in that industry.
And so how has there been any influence from comic book writing that seeps into playwriting? I mean, they're two very, very different, but I'm not sure like for, I don't know, because like we can go back to the high school to college and the overwriting where it's like really refining and pinpointing from comic books into playwriting. I don't know. I'm just curious if there is.
Yeah, well, it's funny because in some ways there's like the silly direct connection of like I literally wrote a play about a comic strip artist, a newspaper comic strip artist. So I like literally tried to create the sensation of reading a comic book on stage, which I thought was really funny. But I do think that it's interesting. I mean, I think that like, if anything, playwriting I think has more so influenced comic book writing in terms of like even in comic books, I really take a character first approach, and I tend to limit myself in terms of like. I don't have that, even in these big, sweeping, grand stories, I tend to not have a very large cast.
Okay.
And I like to really think of each as like, I want to give each character, these great lines to say and these great scenes to have. And for each, like, quote unquote, actor to feel like they are being serviced. So I feel that. So I feel that about the characters in the comic books, in addition to the actual actors.
Well, let's unpack that then. Yeah, how does character come into play now? If you're taking I don't want to say you're taking a comic book approach to it, but like, how has characterization evolved, and how is it, kind of funneled into your playwriting, if that makes sense, or vice versa. I don't know. I'm because I'm not. I don't write comics, so I'm just curious of how each might be affected.
It's interesting. Let's see. I think that like, I mean, with characterization, I'd be lying if I didn't say that all characters, like so many writers, all characters tend to be a combination of both some element of myself and elements of the people in my life that surround me. And I think that I try to even in my comic books take place in Mad Max-esque futuristic wasteland worlds, and strange space ballerina conservatories. And it's important to me that despite the outlandish kind of nature of those environments, that the characters still feel really real. And I think the same is, and I think I probably partially, I feel the same way about my non-human characters in theater, where it's like, oh, it's a horse. They're still need to be just as valid and fully formed, if not more so, obviously, than the human characters.
How do you achieve that? Making characters real, whether they're outlandish or whether or not they're animals, is like, and I guess it kind of goes back to the mindset. But yeah.
I think part of it is earnestness, honestly, like humor. There's a level of silliness involved in all of it, obviously, but I am really earnest about, in a lot of ways, just about like giving when these characters are struggling, like they're really struggling, and to give their struggles weight and significance.
So I'm guessing that you don't fall into stereotypes in this regard with your characters.
I don't think so. I hope not.
Okay, all right. Just curious. I do want to talk about, as we went through the bio, you've a lot of accomplishments with fellowships and achievements as far as locations go. Where do you find those opportunities? Especially being a 3-time Harl Adair Damon Playwriting Award.
That I should qualify. That really came. That was a college award that I won 3 times.
It's an award.
So.
Yeah.
But I will say that I think a lot of times, I think my most successful kind of connections have come, or I guess those sorts of achievements have come through the personal connections I've made with people. I was part of both the Youngblood playwriting group in New York City for a big portion of my life, from like age 21 to 27. And that was hugely, hugely significant. And really, more than anything else, honestly, informed me in my writing. And through a lot of those people, I ended up learning about things to apply to, and getting connected to people who had various programs that would then know me and ask I apply for them. And that was kind of how my experience with the Lark came to be. They had a relationship with Youngblood and Ensemble Studio Theater, and it was really through them that I was also to be able to discover a great community and home for that period of my life.
What are the steps that usually are involved with qualifying, or there's some companies want artist statements, some places just submit. Is there is it timing? Just there I just want to unpack all of it, the processes that go on with qualifying for some of these things for playwrights that might be looking in.
Yes, I mean, honestly, there are people who are much more organized and on the ball than me. My friend Jen Silverman is exceptional at knowing what is happening at all times in this world, and I am not. But
I don't know that your bio says different. Just saying.
Anyway, but I think that, I guess I'll shout out Youngblood again. If you are a playwright under 30 in New York City, I highly recommend applying to that group. It was enormously, it was influential, and I'm still close friends with a lot of those playwrights today.
Does that have to be? Do you have to be local to be involved? It's a legit question. It's not. It's not a gotcha question. It's like, I know that there's certain things. Like, again, we're in a technological world right now, to where it's just like there's some stuff over Zoom, there's stuff over Skype, there's certain things, but there are certain. You've got a play going up to the Echo, and I want to talk about how that opportunity happened, but sometimes you just have to be in it. Some things are in person. So is Youngblood one of those where it's really in person?
Definitely. And one of the significant part, that was there were, weekly meetings where we would all read our work together. There were monthly one-act kind of festivals that really had us actively working with directors and actors and just putting things up on a consistent basis. And it needed to be in person, frankly. And that has kind of a lot of my life in terms of where I've physically ended up has been dictated by kind of the demands of what I'm working on artistically at the moment.
So going backwards to the 3 scenes aspect that we were talking about earlier, and doing the rewrites and things like that. How many passes do you do before? How many passes do you do, and then what's that next step that you might present it? Do you give it to somebody? Do you have a table read?
Yeah.
What's the point that you feel comfortable sharing whatever piece you're working on?
I feel comfortable sharing, I think, relatively early in the process. As I said before, especially when I'm with a group of people in the community that I feel comfortable with, like I had with Youngblood or The Lark. As I said, like in certain other circumstances, I probably wouldn't have come in with 3 scenes. I probably maybe have waited and written more and felt more like I had maybe a sense of direction. But when you find those groups, and I also urge you to create your own writing groups, I think those are incredibly valuable. And I currently have one with some of my friends who were part of that Youngblood playwriting group, actually.
What does that ensemble and assembly look like? To where, like, the expectations, the frequency, if one were to create their own group, what recommendations do you have, like, as far as feedback goes, as far as how many times a month, how many, expectations?
I mean, it differs so much in terms of obviously the number of people that you have in a group and the sort of just the demands of your daily life. I'll say for myself personally, I've recently been in a group with about 3 or 4 other writers, and that's been really nice. And we meet on about a monthly basis, and it's really nice to have that sort of accountability, to feel like I want to have something to share, and it also is just really inspirational in terms of being able to experience other people's work.
Is it just the writers, or do you invite audience members to hear and perhaps get feedback, or do you have actors that come in and read for you to where everybody's just listening, or is the group their own actors?
The current group that I am with is exclusively playwrights, but there, as you know, there is oftentimes an overlap with playwrights and actors. So a lot of them happen to be really talented actors as well.
Sure. Yeah. No, I was asking. There was I don't know if it's still going on. This is pre-lockdown, and there was a friend of mine they had Tuesdays at 9. It was in Hollywood, I think, if I'm not mistaken, and but it was more screenwriting and television stuff like that, and actors would show up and they would read, and then the writers would. So I'm just curious how that approach, if you had a different approach in that regard. So.
Yeah, I think I've definitely had those experiences and really value those experiences. As I said, that was like more akin to what For Want of a Horse was developed with.
So let's talk about getting it. So how did the Echo achievement come about?
Well, I wrote this play many years ago. I wrote this play. I first began writing it, I think, like a decade ago, and I thought it was surely dead, as so many of our artistic projects tend to be. And then the Echo reached out to me about it, pretty much out of nowhere, 2 year ago.
How does that work? Having somebody reach out to a play that doesn't quite exist.
I there have oftentimes, just because the play is quite outlandish, and I think it gained a little bit of just notoriety of just like, you have to read this weird ass play.
Okay, so keep going, because again, it's somewhere. It's obviously it's in the ether. So if you obviously you put it out there somewhere, so somebody knows about it. So this weird ass play is out there. So
yes,
I wanna hear the story.
Yeah, it was floating around the ether, and then the Echo did a reading of it about 2 years ago, and that began the process to where we are today.
And how did it get out there?
Oh God, I don't even know. I mean, I'm sure I sent it to theaters, and then And I mean, it did, during it won this Ventures Fellowship, and I think gained some level of people were intrigued by it because of that.
How did it make it back out after a decade of working on it? Because I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm guilty
Of
it.
course.
I've got my first screenplay I started in 98 or 99, and it's there. Just sitting on a drive, and there's physical copies sitting around the house right now that I just don't bust out. So how do you overcome that? I don't know. What's the right word? Gosh darn it! The word that I'm looking for is because I have a tendency to. Anyways, you know what I mean. You put things off.
Yeah. I mean, in this case, honestly, I feel like I owe some of it to my friend and fellow playwright Kiara Teak, who is part of the weird origin story of this play to begin with.
Okay.
And also, I think did mention it to the folks at the Echo. I think that's where they first heard of it. I'm not sure.
Right.
So I just like, it's amazing to me how much building a community has helped in terms of getting my plays out there.
So you bust out this play. It's 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Or, well, you said decade. You did say decade, not decades. So that's good. Somebody hears about it. Echo calls you up. What's the next step?
So we did a reading. I made some adjustments to just address just update it and some. But honestly, I was like relatively surprised by how much I felt like I didn't want to change what was already there. But I did make adjustments, and that was really fun and engaging. And then I've also been lucky enough to have the play championed by the associate artistic director of the theater, Elena Luo, who is also directing the play. And they have really been an incredible resource in terms of just talking to me about it and brainstorming ideas together, and just like coming up with our approach to how to tackle this bizarre thing.
You mentioned, well, hang on here. Now, what makes it bizarre?
I mean, oh man, you're right, I don't want to put labels on anything. But I will say, I mean, the play to begin with is strange, maybe, in that it has a talking horse. But I mean,
there was Mr. Ed. I mean, come on.
It's true. It's true. I'm just repeating. I'm just a hack. It's
not
true.
at all. No.
But I mean, the pitch, I guess, for this play is that it's about a man who opens up his relationship. He's in a loving marriage, but in order to move forward in his life, he has to open up his marriage to include his new mare friend, which is a horse by the name of Q-Tip. And it is an exploration of the very taboo world of zoophilia.
Well, there you go. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was also Equus.
Yes, it is. And there was also the goat, or who is Sylvia. So I really come from a long line of people who are interested in the subject matter in theater, honestly. But I think that so the secret origin, one of the secret origins of this play was that my friend Kiara Teak was like, Olivia, I discovered this article that you need to read. And it was a 2014 New York Magazine interview with a man who was in exactly this predicament, who had, and it was like a love column. It was called like Strange Love. And he
it's
had
also a Depeche Mode song.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
And he had a polyamorous relationship, which included a horse. And I was so struck by the article, both in terms of like how horrified I was, but also how amused I was, but mostly just how absolutely heartbreaking I found it to be, and how much I felt like I could weirdly empathize in certain regards with this man. And I was like, I feel like I have to explore this in some fashion.
Fair enough. Yeah. You mentioned when you presented it to Echo, there were things you didn't want to change.
Mm-hmm.
How did you overcome that? What were the changes? How did you overcome it? And how did you become open to making those?
Yeah.
And how much did that change? That's a lot to throw at you, but
No, I think that, I really wanted to, upon hearing it again and rereading it, I really did want to like honor the version of myself that wrote that story in a lot of ways. And I felt like if I got too into it and tried to insert my current perspective, I just felt like it would be a strange mishmash of different selves. Not to say that there's something fascinating about like collaborating with your past self,
sure.
But it felt like I was, with that play in particular, just like was such a it was also like a very, despite it was quite a fast experience writing it,
sure,
and quite like a propulsive experience, and so I wanted to honor that in some regards. Honestly, in terms of the changes, it was really deepening one character, which I really had wanted to do from the beginning, which had always been a stray thought in my mind that had bothered me. And upon seeing the reading, I was in this time in particular, I was like, oh, there needs to be another scene, essentially. And so I added another scene. And it's one of my favorite scenes, and I think it works really well.
How's the rehearsal process been?
Well, unfortunately, I will say I'm currently staffed in the writer's room, so I haven't been able to attend as much as I'd like to. I have next week off from my job, so I'm attending rehearsals starting tomorrow. So I sadly cannot really report, but I will say, I talk to Elena, the director, very frequently. And everything seems to be going very, very well. I also, I was there for the whole casting process, and I adore the cast and think that we have assembled a tremendously talented group of human beings. So I'm really excited, and by all accounts, things are going really well.
That's right, because we touched on it last week when things went bad, and like, I don't want to hear anything. We got to save it for when we actually meet up. So, was there anything that we touched on last week that we've missed so far?
No, I think I was just talking about, like, I was mentioning the TV show that I'm currently working on. But.
Yeah. And how's that? How is that? Has that affected your playwriting at all?
Yeah, it's interesting. I came into the film world sort of with a wave of playwrights in like 2017, I think. And it was and it was a big learning curve for me. I kind of taught myself how to write film and TV on the side while I was writing For Want of a Horse. Sure. I was simultaneously like trying to figure out how to write TV and film, and it was a much steeper. It was a very steep learning curve to make that move.
Sure.
But I think that writing in TV and film gave me a much greater appreciation for thinking in terms of visual imagery. And I always like to, in everything that I do, have it be in some way visually compelling or striking. Just like if you just saw like a photo of it, you'd be like, what is that? And so I think that probably more so than anything else, that's impacted my playwriting.
Okay. Now, outside of obviously for Warren of a Horse, appearing at the Echo Theater Company at Outlander Village in Los Angeles, April 18th through May 24th. What are you working on right now? Outside of the more stage than obviously you've got your
Yes.
your TV show.
I will say currently I have begun tinkering with a new play for the first time in a while.
Okay.
Which is exciting, which I feel like I can't really talk. It isn't fully formed enough to talk about yet.
Right, fair enough.
But I'm deeply embedded in the comic book world. I have a new comic book that will be coming out in September. And I'm very excited about that. I have I wrote a short comic piece for this anthology, Love Ignited, through Ignition Press. And then I have a few other comic book projects that have yet to be announced that I'm working on.
Now, are you collaborating with an artist to do that stuff and the panels and whatnot?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's one of my favorite parts of the experience. Like, I get no more joy in my life than when I receive new pages in my inbox.
Sure.
It is like such a dopamine hit.
Nice. And outside of For Word of a Horse, opening at the Echo Theater Company in Outlander Village in Los Angeles, April 18th through May 24th, where can people find your work?
You can, I'm newly using Instagram, so you can follow me on Instagram at Liv Dufault. That's LIVDUFAULT.
Which leads me to the last question. Are you on the socials, which obviously Instagram. So are there any others that you're on?
That's it. And I'm barely on them, but I'm trying.
Trust me, they're a necessary evil, unfortunately. So, Olivia Dufault, I got it right this time. Thanks for coming on this episode of Playwright Spotlight.
Such a pleasure. I appreciate it.
I'm glad we made it happen this time. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Playwright Spotlight. Again, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below, and share the show with a friend. If you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to leave a 5-star review and subscribe to the channel. And in the meantime, and until we see each other again, keep writing.